Thank you very much. This was Vincent Torregano, who is one of our emerging artists. We have 12 of our emerging artists this season, accompanied by Christopher Cano. So I cannot tell you what a great pleasure this is for us to be, after 25 years, the first opera back in the Opera House. And it's such a pleasure for us to be here in this beautiful house. I also want to introduce our leading lady, the Carmen, Jennifer Johnson Cano, who is sitting right next to our mayor. I have to warn you, Mayor, she can be trouble, Carmen. So what you just heard was, in fact, one of the best-known arias of the opera, that is that of the Toreador, the bullfighter, in Act 2. And Vincent is, in fact, on our stage. He sings the character of Morales. That is the first big voice you hear at the top of the opera when you all come, of course, to see the opera, which is tonight, opening night. Jennifer, of course, has many, many recognizable tunes in this opera as well, and you hear them in many commercials for some of the oddest products. But anyway, one of the better known is the Habanera. And I have to say, we had more than 1,000 students here during our dress rehearsal on Wednesday. I overheard one say to the other, "Hey, they took that from the Muppets." But now it is my great pleasure to introduce to you the executive director of the Opera House, James Jensen. And as I mentioned before, it's been a wonderful experience for us to be in this house. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. It's really our pleasure. And as Esther mentioned, the last time we had an opera presentation in this theater was back in 1990. It was the final performances of Sarah Caldwell's Opera Company of Boston. And Sarah acquired this building in 1980, and she was the one who named it the Opera House. Her stagings here were spectacular. They were full of power, very well received. Unfortunately, she had a hard time keeping up with the expense of maintaining this building. And to give you some sense of just what kind of expense we're talking about, the company that acquired the rights was eventually bought by Clear Channel Communications. My boss, Don Law, who now owns the building with David Neugar, was part of that company. And they came in here with a budget of $25 million to restore the theater. To their enduring credit, they stuck with it through $54 million of expense before it reopened with Lion King in July of 2004. And we have been hosting some terrific touring Broadway, the home of Boston Ballet, and many other events here ever since. The opera company was a vital company here, so and it was the last time that a purely acoustic performance was done here, 1990. Now, this theater was originally built as the B.F. Keith Memorial Theater. This is B.F. Keith. The namesake is the bust above us. It was commissioned by his partner, Edward Albee, and he retained the services of the top theater architect of his day, Thomas White Lamb. This was the late 19th, early 20th century. And it was told, what Lamb was told, spare no expense. This is a tribute to my late partner, the king of vaudeville. So he spent twice as much as he had ever spent on any of his other great theaters, and it shows. I mean, the real Carrara marble, the finishes are all spectacular. One of the other things to note about that is that vaudeville was unamplified. It was designed with those acoustics in mind, which is why we're particularly excited to have Opera Company of Boston here to finally bring opera back to this wonderful theater. So thank you, Esther.
Thank you. We do want to take the opportunity to thank the principal owners of the Opera House, David Mugar and Donald Law. Donald, in fact, was the one who initiated the opportunity for us to come to the Opera House. It was one of the more memorable phone calls I had. It says, hey, do you want to come back to the Opera House? So we jumped at the opportunity, and thank you for that opportunity. During our 40 days of opera that we have, culminating with this opening, we actually featured a number of wonderful opera producers in this community, not only our own many special events that we had, but there's so many opera producers in Boston, from the very small avant-garde to the very large, and the many colleges that we have here in town. I can confidently state that Boston, in fact, is an opera town. As early as, in fact, is 1908, many of you might know one of the most significant houses in opera opened on Huntington Avenue. It rivaled the Metropolitan Opera and Chicago Lyric Opera. It was a significant company which was invited to represent the American opera industry to Paris in 1914. So we started very early with a significant history of Boston, of opera in Boston. Carmen, I have to say, also has its own legacy here in Boston. It performed, in fact, at the old Boston Theater right here on Washington, the theater that was here before. And it only was 4 years after the scandalous world premiere in Paris of this story with the cigarette-smoking gypsy harlots smuggling their way through the landscape. So this, of course, it was, like I said, it was scandalous when it premiered in Paris. However, when it came here to Boston, in fact, it was barely a year after the formation of the New England Watch and Ward Society, which clearly wasn't right on the ball because they did not ban it in Boston, their famous ban in Boston. Somehow this opera seemed to escape their notice. Then subsequently, in fact, the very equally scandalous famous movie by Cecil B. DeMille of Carmen's story had its world premiere here in Symphony Hall in 1915. While it was a silent movie, it did star the glamorous Geraldine Farrar, one of the best-known opera mezzos of her day, who was, in fact, a Massachusetts native. That also escaped the ban in Boston for some mysterious reason, but it was swiftly banned right after in Pennsylvania and Ohio as shocking and improper. I can tell you that had we still had the Watch and Ward Society, they probably would ban this Carmen that we are currently doing in Boston. It is, in fact, also one of the largest shows that we have done. You will at one point see more than 100 voices soaring from the stage, including a very large children's chorus here in Boston. While we bring to Boston certainly leading talent from around the world, we're deeply committed to our community with our education programs, training programs, including our emerging artists, and many opportunities for students and professionals, young professionals in this community, whether they be singers or whether they are stage professionals. And I have to say also we have a wonderful program that is an in-school program that goes from 1 to 2 to 3 years, and schools can participate as they see fit. And we had one particular wonderful occasion of one student, a third grader, who in fact had a speech impediment. And by the time he went to, we worked with a speech pathologist in that particular school, and by the time we were done, this child, to his parents' amazement, was on stage singing a leading role in one of the operas that the students created themselves. We are very deeply committed in many ways to our community, which is, I think, verified by the fact that 80%, more than 80% of our budget goes right back into the greater Boston community. Many of these efforts, I have to say, would not be possible if it were not for the accessibility and the support of this City Hall administration under Mayor Martin Walsh. And we're deeply grateful to you because as we're exploring our new chapter, certainly in Boston Lyrics Opera next phase, the city is very helpful to us, accessible, as well as in the many programs that we're doing. I have to say, we certainly experience the renaissance of culture in the city of Boston, which benefits not only us, but all of us. And we're deeply grateful and honored to have you present here today for this occasion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Esther, and I want to thank you for that kind introduction. I want to thank you, Jennifer, for being with us as well. And I didn't get the other great performer's name, but I want to thank him as well. I know he's probably drinking his drink up the back there, so I want to thank him. Ed, thank you as well, and Dawn. I had a chance to take a quick little tour around backstage and hear some of the stories that I'm not going to talk about from this podium about this place that has some secrets, so it's pretty good to know that. This is exciting to be here today to celebrate the 40th anniversary. This is a spectacular theater here in Boston. There's no question about it, and I want to thank Dawn and Dawn in particular for being back here and David for making the investment to this spectacular place. I want to thank the Boston Opera House, the great point of pride that this great theater provides to us. And today marks Boston's Lyric Opera's debut performance, and it was mentioned already, Ed mentioned already, that this theater hasn't seen an opera in 26 years now. So my comments were wrong. So I was just thinking as I was on the stage, thinking how the walls and the ceiling and the fixtures and the mural are all excited about finally having the opera bounce off their different pieces here in the city of Boston, and it certainly is exciting for the city of Boston. I want to thank you as well for talking about what we've done in arts and culture here in the city of Boston, and I really, I get a lot of credit for it, and we have a great arts and culture chief in Julie Barros, but really the main person that drives this and drove it from the very beginning. When I say very beginning, it was back in April when I decided to run for mayor of the city of Boston. It was Joyce Linehan. I want to thank Joyce Linehan for what she's done. I have a speech prepared, and I'm overwhelmed, to be quite honest with you. I didn't think I would be, but I am. So I'm not really going to go into my speech. It's just exciting in our city. We are a world-class city. There's no question about it. And I want to thank all of you that are here today that have supported the arts for so long in our city and made the investment. And I know you made investments in different ways. And I know there are people that are going to watch this, and I want to thank them as well for the investments they've made in our city in arts and culture, particularly around the performances like we're going to see over the course of the next 40 days here in the city of Boston. And I hope this is the first of many operas that will be performed here in the Opera House as we continue to move on and to take our place back on the world stage when it comes to opera and performing arts in the city of Boston. So I want to thank you for that. And I have a citation, a resolution. I'm not going to read the whole thing, partly because I can't see it. That's why I have to say. But today is an important day. The Boston Lyric Opera is starting the 40th season, making the most enduring opera company in the city's history. The Boston Lyric Opera is rechristening the Opera House with a spectacular rendition of Carmen, bringing professional opera back to this location for the first time in a quarter of a century. And there's a whole bunch of other I's, and I'll read them later. But I, Martin J. Walsh, Mayor of Boston, do hereby proclaim September 23rd, 2016, as Boston Lyric Opera Day in the city of Boston. And I'd like to present this to both of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I can get a couple more too if you want. I can get a couple more if you want.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Esther. and for bringing this presentation, this production to our stage today. You know, the Opera House, this theater has welcomed millions of people through this grand lobby here over the decades, and never to a more exciting production than the one we're going to see tonight. So without any further ado, on behalf of the Opera House, Don, our stage crew, our front of house staff, we'd like to welcome you to enter our theater and take a good look at our new production.